CGTN. See the difference.
The world's currencies are more connected than ever before. The mechanisms that drive the economy are universal. Money moves markets. We explain these trends and show you how the cash in your pocket can have a wide-reaching effect. Because money makes the world go round. Global business.
A land full of natural resources and ingenuity, where millions are embracing a vibrant middle class. Divided by politics, but united by hope. Latin America is changing rapidly. Witness the change on America's Now.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello, welcome to CGTN. This is a special coverage on China's 7th National Memorial Day for the Nanjing Massacre Victims. I'm Pandeng in Beijing. 83 years ago, more than 300,000 people were killed in Japan's invasion of the eastern Chinese city of Nanjing in a span of 6 weeks. The Chinese flag was lowered to half-mast Sunday morning at the Memorial Hall of the Victims in Nanjing Massacre by Japanese invaders. In about 50 minutes, a memorial ceremony will begin. Commemorations will also be held across the country. Our reporters are standing by with the latest, and here in our Beijing studio we have Mr. Teng Jianqun from the China Institute of International Studies. Extensive documentation shows that during the Japanese Army's 14-year invasion of China starting in 1931, it engaged in some of the worst crimes against humanity in history. The Nanjing Massacre was one of them.
In 1931, the Imperial Japanese Army invaded Manchuria in China's northeast and occupied vast areas of land. Some 35 million Chinese people died in the fight against the Japanese aggression. The Japanese war policy was plunder, kill, and burn. And this was given full play in December 1937, when it seized the eastern city of Nanjing, the then capital of the Republic of China. According to the Nanjing War Crimes Tribunal in 1947, more than 300,000 people were massacred over the course of 6 weeks. Nearly 20,000 rape cases were reported. Many women were forced into sex slavery. Dozens of mass graves have been discovered over the decades. In 1998, more than 60 years later, the remains of 208 people were recovered from a relatively small grave. In 2014, the Chinese government designated December 13th, the day Nanjing fell, as a national memorial day.
Many places around China will shortly hold memorial ceremonies for the Nanjing Massacre victims. Our reporter Liu Jiaxing is in Nanjing. Now, Jiaxing, give a sense of the atmosphere at where you are.
Yes, Pandeng. Now, today's Nanjing is cold and gloomy, as if it were also commemorating the victims, 300,000 unarmed soldiers and civilians killed 83 years ago by Japanese invaders. And as you said, this is the 7th National Memorial Day for Nanjing Massacre victims. So where I am standing now is the National Memorial Hall for the Nanjing Massacre victims. victims. And in just a few minutes, this national memorial ceremony will be happening over here with over 1,800 people in attendance. That includes survivors, families of the victims, and veterans. Also, people from all walks of life will be attending this ceremony, including the doctors who were on the front lines of the fight against the COVID-19 this year. And due to this year's special circumstances, all of the people in attendance of the ceremony have been through strict quarantine and self-isolation of 14 days. So safety issues are guaranteed so far. Now, only 73 survivors are still alive, and they are the living testimony of this undeniable war crimes. I remember that 3 months ago, Chinese President Xi Jinping delivered a speech on the 75th anniversary of the victory of Chinese people's war of resistance against the Japanese aggression. He said Japan's aggression in China is its darkest history in China's modern history, but he also wants the country to correctly treat this history and also stay vigilant and be committed to peace. And I think that's all what it means to us in this ceremony. And of course, today, the whole city will be in mourning for the moment. At 10 o'clock during the air raid siren, all the motor vehicles on pedestrians and all personnel in public places will observe a minute of silence, and cars will honk their horns in mourning. Ships, trains will also blow their horns in mourning at the same time. Again, this is a moment of seriousness. We should always remember this history and safeguard our peace. Back to you.
Thank you very much, our reporter Liu Jiaxing in Nanjing. Now let's turn to our reporter Guan Yang, who's standing by in the northeastern Chinese city of Shenyang, where a mourning ceremony will also be held very soon. Hello, Guan Yang, tell us more about the upcoming event there.
Hello, Pandeng. This morning, commemoration ceremonies were held across China's northeast to mourn the victims of Nanjing Massacre, in which more than 300,000 Chinese were killed on this date 83 years ago. I'm at the September 18th Museum in Shenyang, a place that serves as a reminder of Japan's full-scale invasion of China. The exterior design of the museum is like a calendar book with that special date in history engraved on it. At 10 o'clock, a mourning ceremony will be held here. Government officials, representatives from the People's Liberation Army, as well as the local primary school students will be holding candles to mourn the victims of Nanjing Massacre. Also, due to the anti-pandemic measures, the number of visitors to the event has been kept low compared to previous years. People are encouraged to take part in the ceremony with their mobile phones by clicking into the museum's official WeChat account. And also, during Japan's full colonialist expansion in northeast China, the Japanese established the puppet state of Manchukuo in 1932, with the city of Changchun as its capital. Today, numerous Japan's wartime atrocities in the region are being remembered, like the notorious Unit 731 set up by the Japanese Army in Harbin to develop Japan's biological warfare program. It conducted vivisection experiments on innocent people, and the Pingdingshan massacre in the city of Fushun, during which more than 3,000 miners were brutally killed and over 800 houses were razed. So the memorial ceremonies across major cities in China's northeast this morning do serve as the reminder for the Chinese to keep the darkest days firmly in mind. Pandeng.
Thank you very much, our reporter Guan Yang in the northeastern Chinese city of Shenyang. Only 73 Nanjing Massacre survivors are now alive after 4 more died this past year. They are Jiang Shuping, Yao Xiuying, Zhu Xiuying and Ma Hongxiang. In the 1990s, the Nanjing municipal government made a big effort to track down survivors, and it later published more than 100 testimonies. Earlier at the Nanjing Massacre Memorial Hall, some of the remaining survivors gathered at a special memorial to pay their respect to those who died 83 years ago.
The Memorial Hall of the Victims in Nanjing Massacre by Japanese invaders was built near a site where thousands of bodies from that fateful 6-week period were buried. Victims' names are engraved on a marble wall. However, many could not be identified. Survivors and descendants of victims have been paying tribute to those who perished during the massacre of 1937. Memories of the brutality are still fresh among some survivors.
The young should cherish peace and remember to be against war.
Those present for a special ceremony laid white flowers to commemorate the dead.
Paying tribute to the deceased is a traditional and important Chinese custom. The purpose of the annual family tribute is to pass on the historical memory of the massacre.
An effort was started last year to keep a record of the descendants of the victims of the massacre. It's been a hugely popular initiative, with many signing up keen to preserve the legacy of the 6-week ordeal.
The book records the tragedy and misery of my mother-in-law and her family. I hope it can encourage future generations to remember this history and to cherish peace.
The Memorial Hall has been hosting various exhibitions and activities over the years to ensure the lessons learned from that brutal historical event 83 years ago are never forgotten.
For more insights, we're joined in the studio by Mr. Teng Jianqun from the China Institute of International Studies. So, Mr. Teng, we know China designated December the 13th as the National Memorial Day for Nanjing Massacre Victims in 2014. As we often heard, common mentioning is that this is the time of peace and development. So what's the significance of remembering and commemorating that special chapter, that dark chapter in China's modern history?
Yeah, December 13 actually is a sad day for China and for all our Chinese. And as mentioned in the video, this is a massacre initiated by the Japanese invaders 83 years ago. And within 6 weeks, more than 300,000 innocent people and armed soldiers were killed. So this is a sad day for the Chinese people, and this is also remembering day for China. We should remember the history and to show the respect to lives and to show the respect to international law. And this is not decision by the People's Congress. This is decision by the Chinese people. So I think this is very important for China to remember the sad day and to cherish the peace and to safeguard the stability in this region, and for China, for the whole region.
So having said that, we know the Chinese people used 14 years to defeat Japanese invaders. How important is that part of history to the building of a modern Chinese identity?
Yeah, China sacrificed a lot during the 14 years resistance war, and after that, with the cooperation with other countries, I think China has become stronger and stronger, especially after more than 40 years reform and open up. This is a very specific occasion. We are facing new challenges, including the pandemic, and also some other countries, for example, the United States initiated so-called strategic competition with China, and some countries like Japan would like to join such a competition with China. So I think this is another important occasion for our Chinese to remember the history and to think about how can we find a way out of such a dilemma to meet these challenges we are facing now.
So, since you mentioned Japan, 75 years after its defeat in the Second World War, do you think Japan has presented a deep reflection of its wartime crimes?
No, I don't think the Japanese government, even today, gave a very complete regret or something like that to the victims in China, in some other countries in Asia Pacific region. So this is a very sad news for all the peoples concerned, and I think why the Japanese government or even the Japanese people sometime denied such a massacre in Nanjing and in some other places in China and some other countries. So this is a result of the United States, during the Korean War. I mean, in 1950s, the United States rearmed the Japanese military for their own sake. So this is a lesson we should learn from history. How can we give a complete, and thoughtful consideration on such a incident in China? And I think the Japanese government or the Japanese people should show the respect to the history and show the respect to the lives and also the international law, give complete regret to the victim of crimes committed by the Japanese military during World War II, especially during 14 years in China.
So, since you mentioned that U.S. influence, do you think it's still a dominating factor for Japan to deny those historical facts even today?
Yeah, I think the United States actually played a very active role in this regard, because the United States immediately after the Korean War adopted an ideology-oriented policy toward China and toward Japan.
As we're talking about this, we're watching live footage from Nanjing. The memorial ceremony for the victims of the Nanjing Massacre has officially started. Honor guards are entering the venue. Again, this is live footage from Nanjing. The ceremony commemorating the victims of Nanjing Massacre is underway. China designated December the 13th as the National Memorial Day for Nanjing Massacre Victims in 2014. And since then, such memorial ceremonies have been held every year on December the 13th.
The National Memorial Day service for the Nanjing Massacre victims now begins. Let's play the Chinese national anthem. Please stand in silent tribute to the Nanjing Massacre victims. Silent tribute is over. Please lay wreath to the Nanjing Massacre victims. The member of the Politburo, the Secretary of Secretariat of CPC Central Committee, Head of the Organization Department of CPC Central Committee, Mr. Chen Xi, will give a speech. Dear comrades, dear friends, we are gathering at this solemn occasion in remembrance of the Nanjing Massacre victims, the innocent victims, in remembrance of those whose lives have been taken by the Japanese troops, in remembrance of those who devoted their lives to the liberation of the Chinese nation, in remembrance of those who fight together against the Japanese invaders, in remembrance of those international friends who have fought together with the Chinese people, to remember the day of atrocity, to honor peace, to open for a new chapter of our future. We are here to express our solemn aspiration for peaceful development. Since the Opium War in 1840, the invaders invaded the China and taken the lives of many Chinese people. And the Japanese troops started the 9/18 atrocity and invaded the northeast part of China. In 1937, the Japanese troops started the 7/7 event. The Japanese troops took over the Chinese land and the lives of the Chinese people and committed despicable crimes in China. The Nanjing Massacre is an inhuman act in human history. The Japanese troops took 300 and 1,000 lives of the Chinese people. This is against the international law and has left a dark page in human civilization. After the war, the International Court of Justice has ruled that the atrocity of the Japanese troops is inhuman and unrighteousness. Thanks to the resistance of the Chinese people from across China, from across the Great Wall to other parts of China, the people of the Chinese nation fought together against the invasion of the Japanese troops. Throughout 14 years of struggle, the Chinese people embraced the victory of the final victory of the anti-fascist war in the world. This has led the Chinese nation from the invasion to victory. It is a victory of justice. It's a victory of the Chinese nation. It will be imprinted on the tripod of history. The history struggle will never be forgotten. Our step for making progress in history shall never stop. Now, we are more close than ever to realize the dream of the Chinese rejuvenation. We have lifted the Chinese people out of poverty. We are almost close to realizing the dream of building a moderately prosperous society. This is our commitment to those deceased. From the new historic conditions, we will remain committed to the central leadership of the CPC Central Committee. No matter how this history will change, the CPC Central Committee will remain always the leadership of the Chinese nation. Since this year, the outbreak of the COVID-19 has plagued China and the world. With the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee, we have fought against the COVID-19 outbreak, and we have won the fight against the virus. China is the first to control the virus epidemic in the world and to restore the economic performance. This has demonstrated the advantage, remarkable advantage of the socialism in China. This has demonstrated the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee in China, and this has demonstrated that the Communist Party of China is always the strongest, always the strongest backup of the Chinese people. We will give full play to the Chinese national spirit. Patriotism will always remember the deepest spirit and the deepest emotions of the Chinese nation. Patriotism rises among the hearts of our people. It holds us together. We have seen a number of great examples who fought for our nations, a number of heroes who devoted their life and happiness, who sacrificed themselves for the national prosperity of the nation. They have sacrificed themselves for the national progress and the livelihood of our people. The Chinese people are always a nation that rise up from the struggles and sorrows and pains. We will uphold the international spirit of friendliness and work together with the international community despite the changes in the world. Since the Nanjing Massacre took place, a number of international friends sacrificed themselves to help the Nanjing people out of difficulty and atrocity. This shall never be forgotten by our people. Since the coronavirus outbreak this year, the international community has wrote a song in remembrance of our friendliness spirit. And we have donated the materials to those countries in need for combating the COVID-19 crisis. Only by cooperation and working together can we work against and can we weather the difficulties. Dear comrades, dear friends, the Chinese nation loves peace. The Chinese people are peace-loving people. China always upholds international peace and development. We embrace multilateralism and works against unilateralism and the atrocities and the terrorism. We uphold international peace and development and work in line with the new requirements for a new type of China-Japanese relations. We will always work towards the trend of peaceful development. Dear friends, dear comrades, the deceased cannot be returned to their lives, but we shall always remember them. Now China is working on the 14th five-year plan period. We are drawing a new blueprint for national development. We uphold a bright future for the whole nation. Let's get together around the central leadership with President Xi Jinping at its core and work hard for our bright future of the Chinese nation and practice the new philosophy of development and seek quality development and build a new social modernized country. Let's write a new chapter in national development. The Nanjing Youth representatives will read the Ode to Peace. The Yangtze River runs through the city of Nanking. The flowers of Zhongshan Mountain are forever blossoming. In 1937, the tragedy befell in Nanjing. On December the 13th, the city was invaded. The Japanese invaders committed despicable crimes. Bodies covered the fields and blood stained the Yangtze River. 300,000 lives perished in 6 weeks of purgatory and devastation. The world has been shocked and the whole country in mourning. The cold winter is the witness to the calamity. It's an unprecedented event and a dark page in human civilization. It's tragical, yet alarming. Weakness and poverty leads to shame and humiliation. Invasion and separation plagued our motherland. But the people were awakened and strived for independence and liberation. Reform and rejuvenation has prospered the country, but we should never forget history as it's a lesson to the descendants. Pains and suffering is what made us strong. 83 years of struggle has been engraved in history. We were never defeated, but grew stronger ever since. On the Memorial Day of 2020, we are once again convened on this solemn occasion. Wearing white flowers in remembrance of the victims, we wrote this Ode to Peace to demonstrate the righteousness and justice never die. Friendliness and harmony leads to prosperity. Peace and development are the theme of the times. National rejuvenation is the dream for generations. The words of commemoration were imprinted on the tripod. The history shall be remembered and forever be engraved. The history shall be remembered and forever be engraved. The history shall be remembered and forever be engraved. The National Memorial Day service for the Nanjing Massacre victims now closes. The Nanjing Massacre Historical Facts exhibition is now open for visit.
That was the memorial ceremony for Nanjing Massacre victims held in the city where the atrocity happened 83 years ago. Now, for more insight, let's talk to Mr. Teng Jianqun. So, Mr. Teng, during the ceremony, senior CPC official Chen Xi mentioned that holding such events are not only about remembering the past, but also about showcasing China's commitment to peace now, in the now and future. Tell us more about China's commitment to peace in its development path.
Let's talk in two parts. First, domestically speaking, I think China has been on a fast track to develop its social life and also its economic or the comprehensive power of the country, at least in recent 40 years. And internationally speaking, China has been the most important actor, a player in maintaining the peace and the stability in Asia-Pacific region or even in some other part of the world. For example, the peacekeeping forces contributed by the Chinese government. I think China has been the largest contributor, for international peacekeeping in Africa, in Middle East, in some other parts. So I think China is willing to show its commitment or determination to cooperate with other countries in maintaining peace and stability in our world. And of course, there are some challenges for China. How can we deal with these, provocation from the United States, even from Japan, sometime? And but I think Chinese are very confident today because we have such a determination and also we have such a power to maintain the peace for the sake of Chinese people and also for the countries concerned in this region.
And we know that peace is not given, it must be guarded, and sometimes it must be fought. So the world right now is facing lots of uncertainties. Tell us some prominent destabilizing factors regarding against world peace. Earlier you mentioned some far-right forces in Japan denying the history. And we see this wave is approaching to Europe, to the United States. We see far-right forces are out there and trying to start a populist movement against the current establishment of the world.
There are some challenges we are facing now. For example, the far-right is just deny the crime committed by the militaries, by German military and by the Japanese military during World War II. But I think the leaders in these countries, have played a very important role in restrict these activities or momentum in the rightist intention. So I think, for example, in Germany, immediately after World War II, the leaders just gave a very, positive regret sorry to the victims and to the countries who suffered during World War II. And as a result of such attitude, Germany was immediately integrated into the international community, especially established a good relation with its neighboring countries in Europe. However, in Asia-Pacific region, even today, some senior leaders in Japan still denied the crime committed by the Japanese military during World War II, especially in China. And so I think sometimes the Japanese government just has taken a very ambiguous attitude toward this crime, without a clear-cut attitude toward this crime committed by the Japanese military during World War II. I don't think Japan can enjoy a good relation with its neighboring countries in Asia-Pacific region.
Thank you very much, Mr. Teng Jianqun with the China Institute of International Studies. And that's it for this special coverage on the National Memorial Day for the victims of Nanjing Massacre on CGTN. I'm Han Zheng in Beijing. Bye for now.